It's 4 o'clock in the morning. I can't sleep. My back is killing me. It hasn't been the same since a long time. With those cops who need me in the back. When I protested in front of the MCFD office on my daughter's birthday on April 4th, it's really boogered up my back. I've seen a chiropractor, Dr. Jordan Myers in Coquitlam quite a few times, around 10 sessions, but still, it's not getting any better. It's on and off, but today and yesterday has been the worst. Yesterday night, I went to a town meeting, went to see Dallas Brodie as she was sharing about her mission and her platform, and I'm very inspired. She reminds me of Queen Esther, a woman of boldness, a woman that defends and wants this country to be a better place. She has a lot of balls, willing to call out the crooks and just the fraud, and I feel I should also do something quite similar, because what sort of put her on the drawing board was the documentary that she made called Making a Killing. I've been thinking about our way forward to get my son Theo back, and it is not an easy process. I've talked to some different lawyers, and nobody wants to take my case unless they get $20,000, $30,000, $40,000. So it's quite frustrating, the cost of everything, because I just remember when I was in Brunei, I just met all these different prisoners, and the amount of money that they just wasted on lawyers is just horrific. And last night, Dallas Brodie was sharing about how the Queen Charlottes became Haida Gwaii, and there were people who were private owners. They owned the properties, but after David Eby, he just swept in a whole bunch of just handed over to the Aboriginals. And I myself, I believe that the natives, the Aboriginals in this land, they've gone through so much trauma. They've had land taken from them, their culture, their language, their families have been stolen and split apart. You know, there's stories where I heard where the white man purposely gave them smallpox. You know, they infected the blankets and purposely gave them disease. And even recently I was thinking, somebody was sharing with me that song by Bob Marley, Buffalo Soldiers. And it's about these soldiers that are hired by the white man. And those soldiers are black people, and they were hired to kill off all the bison so that the natives don't have a food source. And the natives would rely on the white man for cattle and for food. And so when I look at how natives live nowadays, the food they eat, the junk, there are a few that eat healthy, but majority of them have been just introduced to the white man's diet, which is highly addictive and detrimental. It's such a pity. Up here in the Okanagan, up in Vernon and Kelowna and Salmon Arm, there's so many pot shops, and it just behooves me. Like, we have, like, the Aboriginals have all this land, and yet most, I don't know, like 80-90% of what they invested in is pot shops. And marijuana, I have never smoked a joint in my life. And you know, I've met some friends after they take it, they become paranoid, they're all afraid, And it's not a drug I think is good for you. It doesn't bring out courage. And yesterday night, Dallas Brodie, there was a topic also about the undrip. And it was interesting because, in Tawasin, a whole bunch of land was given to the Aboriginals. And I remember growing up, my dad would bring me up there and we'd go crabbing and we'd catch crabs. And on the left side, the crabs, the lungs are clear, they're white, but you crab on the right-hand side where the fairies are, and their lungs are black. I guess it's the soot from the fairies. But now I'm Seventh-day Adventist, so those are unclean, so no, we don't eat crab anymore. But anyway, the land over there was given to the Aboriginals. They took all that land, they built that mall, Tawasin Mills over there. And after it was built, it was sold to a Chinese lady. And it just shows, like, they're trying to make Aboriginals and the normal people fight. And by stirring the pot, as we fight amongst each other, later on the UN comes in, just takes over and just controls everything. And it's quite interesting just to see the protesters yesterday. When I was outside, there's people shouting, there's people with signs. They didn't want Dallas Brodie there at all. And it's just interesting, the mentality, because Dallas Brodie said that there's a lot of leaders, chiefs, that just call her down, call her a racist, and denying a genocide. But she has people who are in the native bands, and they're sharing about how corrupt the system is, how they have to ask the chief for permission to do renovations, to it's just horrible conditions. And the leaders, there's no accountability. They stuff so much money in their pockets, and they leave their tribe, their people, living in poverty. And it's not all of them, but it's just interesting to see, because she's fighting for equality. She's fighting for justice, accountability. And when she called out the WHO, when she called out the people who meet up in Switzerland and the World Economic Forum, she and even China, coming in and swaying people with that dirty money. She calls out the corruption, and I really had a good feeling and impression upon her, because I don't like politics. When Trump came into power, I actually was quite happy, because he was a man with a backbone. He wasn't someone who was groomed into the position, and he actually stood up for some things. Like, he released people who were put in prison because they were protesting against abortions, and they were trying to educate women that there's another choice. Don't kill that baby. And there's women that were put into prison by the Biden administration. So there's a lot of corruption and people who are targeted and bullied and just tortured and thrown into prison. So Trump, he has his positives, he has his negatives. No one's perfect, and that's why talking about politics, it's the only one who is perfect is Jesus Christ. He was the one that came to show us the character of the Father. And I'm having a struggle, because deep down inside, there are people who I'm really angry at. It started off with doctors at BC Children's Hospital that discriminated against my wife and I because of our vaccine choice and the method of treatment we wanted for our son Theo. We wanted to give him goat's milk formula, and it wasn't allowed. And we just found some goat's milk formula just the other day at Walmart. Or was it at London Drugs? But we bought some from New Zealand, and they said, nope, it's not approved by Health Canada. It's not sold here in Canada, so you can't give it to your son. And we spent hundreds on non-GMO soya formula. And we just wanted the best for our son. We wanted a second opinion. We wanted Dr. Mark Chilvers, a respirologist, to just go through the basic guidelines and the procedures before he goes through a tracheostomy. And he denied it. He didn't allow my son to breathe on his own, even though he knew my son breathed for 30 minutes unassisted by the CPAP. He still pushed for the tracheostomy. That was so unneeded. And it's all documented. Dr. Daniel Nagase has done an excellent Substack on it. I'm angry at certain social workers. The first one was Brianne Landy, who was the intake one, and she was so biased. She totally sided with the doctors, and angry with the lawyer that we had, Isaac Hill, that represented my wife when he shouldn't have, and consented to the custody order, where it took away our rights as parents to make medical decisions. I'm just angry because these people are wolves in sheep's clothing. People working in the ministry, we have who's the newest MCFD minister right now? Before it was like Mitzi Dean. Now it's is it Jody Wickens? She was interviewed yesterday and it was live on YouTube. And I hear all these fluff words about how there's millions of dollars. We want to help children who are autistic, and yet during question time they don't even answer the questions asked. Like, one of the questions was, in order to get the funding, a family has to be making under $50,000. And like, how is that fair when to survive in Canada, in BC, it's so difficult? Like, to make under $50,000 to be eligible for this funding, how only a few people can get that funding. So we just these people handle millions of dollars, and they're in charge. They say really nice things. Questions are asked. They bounce the question. They don't even and even in YouTube there's no comments allowed. Comments are turned off. Like, how is this an interaction? How is this actually truth when they say something but they don't practice it? It's hypocrisy. To me, it's just say one thing, do the other thing. And I pray that I myself am not a hypocrite. I pray I stand by the values I live, and God will hold me accountable. And inside, I pray I have a clear conscience, because it's not natural to lie. It's not natural to hurt other people and take advantage of others. And I just remember Brianne Landy, when she was in court, she was testifying against us and saying that, she saw the video and my son was gasping for air. He was turning blue, and those are false allegations. And when I questioned her, I could see her eyes were like bloodshot. Her veins in her face were just popping. Her blood pressure was so high. And that night, I myself, I couldn't sleep well that last night, that night after, because I was just thinking, like she really had a lot of stress, because it's not natural to lie. And she had to lie in front of a judge. She had to lie so that Theo would be taken away and the ministry would make a whole bunch of money. Like, the amount of fraud that the hospital has taken from the taxpayers is just ridiculous. Like, the airplane trip over to BC Children's Hospital, the surgery to fix his TEF, which is tracheal esophageal fistula. It's those things are amazing. Like, we live in a country where people would die for free healthcare, but when the doctors push unnecessary procedures like a tracheostomy or a G tube or a GJ tube, and they give benzodiazepines saying that, oh, your baby is stressed out, he has a bit of anxiety after the surgery, so we're going to give him these midazolam and lorazepam, these benzos. It calms his nerves. But this is a black box label drug. This drug is so detrimental that that long term you'll become suicidal. You don't enjoy anything in life. So I just feel that this journey we've been on, where we've met different families, we've connected really well with the Zeng family. It's unfortunate that Evan died. He really wanted to live. He really wanted a fighting chance. We had fenbendazole, we had hemp oil, CBD, we had a protocol that was put together by some naturopaths from the States. And they came up and they visited, and we were wanting to implement it. We wanted to work with the doctors, but the doctors called the ministry, especially at Canuck's place. There's, I forgot his name. It's been so long. But that doctor, he said, this boy needs comfort care. He needs these drugs. And the drugs that they were giving Evan, morphine, which causes severe constipation, fentanyl patches that just made him go crazy and hallucinate things and scream all the time and just be at a fit with everybody. And they gave him Nauzalan, and that drug, you're not supposed to be in direct sunlight. These are end-of-life drugs that are, once you start taking them, there's no bouncing back. They screw you up big time. And, in Canada, you're supposed to have a choice. You're supposed to, have the freedom to leave. Well, the parents tried to leave Canuck's place. They left. They went to BC Children's Hospital. And this doctor came in and said, the protocol is he's terminal. He's my patient. Take off all the leads. We are starting with the morphine and the Ativan right into the legs. And after a few hours, they did that, and I was right there by his bedside, and this doctor called security and had me pulled off and escorted out of the hospital. And he wanted me by his side. Evan wanted me by his side. His parents wanted me to be there. But the parents are pulled into another room by MCFD, and they put him in a coma. And within 48 hours, we got the news when my family and his sister Ashley was at Dr. Mel Boucher's house in North Van, that he died. And so it's heartbreaking that these drugs, which are so dangerous, these drugs are used as date rape drugs. These drugs are used to kill people and commit fraud. It's terrible that the hospital would use these on children. And this is a one-off occasion. There was another occasion where a friend of mine called me in to pray for this boy that fell down the stairs, and he was in a coma. So I went into the hospital. I met with the mother, prayed, and after the prayer, I just looked at the machines, and there he is. He's on morphine, and he's also on midazolam, and it was infusing into his blood with an IV. And I told my friend, I said, if you want this boy to live, these drugs have to stop. He's put in a coma because of those drugs. And they didn't do it. They didn't, they just trusted the medical professionals. And in a few hours, the boy passed away. I also visited another friend in Surrey. he shared with me that his daughter just passed away not too long ago, and she was on fentanyl and midazolam, which is a benzodiazepine. And after sharing my experience, he's like, the medical institute, they killed my daughter. And, it's just frustrating because, we go to the hospital thinking that these people are trained professionals. They have all this equipment, x-rays, MRIs, CTs. You have anesthesiologists, people who know about drugs, and, there'd be the right dosage. And they could put you out. There's no pain. But instead, you go there, and what do they want to push? They want to push vaccines on you. They want to push all these antibiotics, Tylenol. Even the milk formula that they wanted to give my son was either a cow-based formula with casein or a soya-based formula that is GMO. So we ourselves, we had to, out of our own pocket, buy non-GMO soya powder because my wife wasn't lactating enough. So it's just frustrating to see so much corruption. And I just remember there was a couple, and this lady from, I think it was from the Dubai or the UAE, but she gave birth to twins early, and they were both in NICU. One was discharged, but the other one was kept there for already 2 months at that time. And I think the bill was racking up to over $2 million. And, the mother and the father, they paid the bill for the first child, for the first son. And but the other one, they couldn't afford it. And their insurance company in the Middle East was refusing to cover it. So they were having issues. And I was like, wow, just in 2 months, $2 million. So my son has been in BC Children's in the NICU for over, NICU, and then he was in the PICU over a year. And then later on, he was at Sunny Hill Rehab, and he was there for over a year also there. So that's like almost 3 years. And the reason was because of MCFD, because of the courts, because of them holding him hostage at the children's hospital, fighting for who is the guardian, who is the ones that should make medical decisions. And so, anyway, all these things that have happened with the judge, with the lawyers, and even the police, and me protesting peacefully and getting beaten up, and MCFD, they call themselves the Ministry of Family and Child Development, but to me, they're the Ministry of Family and Child Desecration. Like, we got an email from Cheryl, and it's so early, my mind can't think all these names, but the 2 social workers and who are in charge of my son, and they said, we can't answer any questions. Theo has been transferred to another office. If you want to know more, this is the email address you can contact. So we emailed them, and we also emailed both of them all together, and we said, this is an important thing that happened. How come you haven't informed us? Who are the new people in charge? Who is the new social worker? And have you even kept with our desires as Seventh-day Adventists with my son and the values that we have? Like, what's going on? And that it's been over a month, and we've sent follow-up emails, no response at all. And it's just so frustrating dealing with these people at the Ministry of Family and Child Development, and they're asking for more money from the government because they're failing families. And people like Cheryl and anyway, these social workers who have been involved in my case, there needs to be administrative review. They need to get severely punished for just going against their guidelines. The amount of money they get for my son. And in Canada, it's just awkward because, I was just thinking, when I was living in Surrey, we had a neighbor that was across the street, and he was taking care of this blind lady in a wheelchair. And he was telling me he was getting around $6,000 a month. I was like, wow, and that was a lot of money. It was like, 12, 13 years ago. And I was thinking just recently, man, if that money went to the family of that person and the family could actually take care of that person, well, what a blessing to the family. But instead, it goes to these people who have to take them to appointments. They have to follow everything that the government says, with all the drugging, with all the flu vaccines and whatever vaccines, COVID vaccines. And it's just saddening that instead of the government strengthening families, there's so many families that are just being destroyed. And yesterday I got a ride with Robert Johnson. He's a dentist in Salmon Arm. And he's been really outspoken on social media. Like he's a really smart dentist, and he set up a dental clinic. He and his wife, now his ex-wife, but she just ran off with another man, and the courts decided that you can't be around your children. And he's just angry because how can you stop? It should be equal parenting. Like he as a father, just because the ex-wife is uncomfortable that she has a new boyfriend in her life, and now she can take half of what they've built up, and he's not allowed to see the kids just because of the uncomfortableness of her. It's just, and the court siding with her, it's just ludicrous. It's so unfair. So I pray there will be reform. I know that we live in tough times. You go to the grocery shop, the cost of food is terrible. When I see the people who are homeless, living in the cold in the streets, it's not a nice world we live in. But the thing is, after meeting Dallas Brodie, meeting the people cheering her on, and she's like a modern day Esther. She is somebody who I really admire, and she has the courage to speak out against powerful, corrupt tyrants. And because of her law background, I think there can be positive change in this country. So I hope there will be positive changes, because I wanted to ask a question yesterday. It was regarding Aboriginal land claims. For example, if I'm doing construction and then I'm digging and I find some artifacts, or I find some skeletons, and I report this. Well, you know what happens? There's archaeologist that comes, there's a stop order on the construction on the building, and I have to start paying for the archaeologists. And it could take months, years for it to finally settle. And guess, these archaeologists aren't cheap. It's a lot of money. So all of a sudden, Aboriginals can say, "Oh, this is sacred land." It's and it doesn't make any sense. If the Aboriginals want to make this a sacred land, well, they should repay me. They should give me another piece of land that's of equal value, and I can continue my project. For them to take the land, to stop the construction, to hire archaeologists and then I'm billed for it. It makes no bloody sense. Like, I know some people who have found some interesting things, and they just cover it up. Why? Because they know it's messed up. They know that you open up a can of worms and the government will take full advantage of you. And so, I hope there's this more common sense in this country, because how do you encourage people to do the right thing? how do you encourage people to share these artifacts and these bones and these sacred sites if there's no common sense? It just it's just crazy. Um, but everybody has a choice. Recently I heard about a story about this guy who bought this tank, and it was from the Kuwait War. I think he paid like 30,000 pounds or euros for it, and he was looking around in it, and as he was taking it apart, there was a secret compartment in it, and inside were gold bricks, gold bars, and oh, how much was the value? The value was in its millions of dollars. And the thing is, he actually returned it, and he actually told the government, and the government took it and gave him a receipt. And I was thinking, man, that's crazy. I was reading the comments. One guy was saying that, oh yeah, just take pieces of the gold and just pawn it, and just get money bit by bit. That's your retirement fund. But this guy, he just wanted to, I guess, return the gold to its rightful owners. And I don't know, because that gold, it belonged to Saddam Hussein, but America went in. They wanted to take the tomb and the things from Gilgamesh's tomb. Some people say it was Nimrod, some people say it's Nebuchadnezzar. But yeah, Candace Owens did a really interesting story about that not too long ago. I was like, that's the reason why we went into Iraq. It wasn't really because of weapons of mass destruction. The true looters, unfortunately, was America. And there's also another story that I found very interesting. It was about, it happened in Greenland. There were some NASA explorers, and they're doing their experiments. They're mapping out the land. They're putting, they're sending sonar from their plane to look down into the ice fields, and something comes out, something really that's man-made. And it's an interesting story how it was actually something that was made many decades ago, and it was actually a nuclear facility, like actually a little town. And in the story, the guy was sharing about, there was actually a nuclear meltdown, and the guys had to like take these lead bags and like pile it up on it to contain the nuclear leak, in case because it was overheating. But anyway, it's an interesting story because America came in. They said they were doing some exploration in Greenland, and they had these snow plows that carved these tunnels, like these things into the snow, and then they covered up with these huge metal roofs, and then they covered it with snow. And inside there was a town. People were working there, living there. There was a barber shop. There was a movie theater, but the thing was, the snow kept on moving, and it was getting smaller and smaller. They would have crews with chainsaws trying to make it bigger again, but it was getting smaller and smaller, and it was crushing the nuclear reactor. And in the end, they just abandoned the project. And the things they abandoned, there was like nuclear waste fluid. There was radioactive fluid. There was a whole bunch of diesel. There was also this toxic substance with a cancerous chemical in it, and they just left it. And later on, secret files were given saying that what they were planning was actually to set up camps and a base so that if there was war with Russia, America would have a whole bunch of nuclear warheads or missiles ready to launch. They could just open up the tunnel and then boom, launch it, because with the nuclear reactors. So it's quite interesting, this story, because later on he shared about something that happened, how this one expensive yacht got stuck in Greenland, and they were helped out. But 2 days later, there was a massive tsunami in that area. Like a seismologist recognized something really weird, like all these and it was like this perfect frequency. Like it would peak, and then I think 90 seconds later it would peak again. And what had happened was a huge chunk of ice had fallen off some mountains, and it splashed in the water, and the waters became a huge tidal wave and was sloshing back and forth and back and forth. And this was up in Greenland, in this one, was it a river or this one area that, the water would have just splashed back and forth. And it carved out, it eroded all the walls. They were really high waves, I think 80, 90 feet tall. But it's just interesting to think that, maybe global warming is actually because of man-made reasons. Maybe it's because of America doing these things in Greenland and putting these toxic substances, radioactive substances that are in the ice. And that ice is melting now, and we're all getting affected. And, in the name of, climate change and to protect the weather, then, we got to have these taxes. And it's just like, it just makes me think like, the devil is clever. The virus maker is clever because he also makes the antivirus too, and he can profit on everything. The devil causes a problem, and he also has a solution. And America and Canada, we're one of the few countries that have the freedom of speech. Mine almost got taken away. My lawyer, because of this criminal case of them saying I kidnapped my son, they want to put me away for 10 years, and the Crown is trying to come up with a case against me, and it's moving forward. But they wanted me to take off all my videos on Facebook. They wanted me to delete things and not have a voice. So, social media, we can share a lot of our thoughts. We can share and influence others. And, I just pray that there will be reform in this world. But, ultimately, I like to study the Bible, and it's only just going to get worse, unfortunately. But, there are people who are lights. There are reformers. Martin Luther, Yerk Zwingli, Muhammad Gandhi. There are people like Joseph who made it all the way up, second in command after Pharaoh. God can work wonders, and I just pray for Dallas Brodie and this movement. Hopefully, with her political might, her power, she can influence people. And my story with my plight and what my family has gone through, and my little boy Theo that has gone through so much torture. Like he hates glasses, and they just put glasses on him, eye drops, and they put an eye patch on him because one pupil is a bit different than another, and he can't communicate yet. And yet the optometrists, they just, if a child doesn't have a parent to advocate for them, these fraudsters, these exploiters will do anything to a child. So I just pray that families will be made stronger in this country. And I have a quote it's one of my favorites. It's written by Ellen White. It's in the book Education. It says, "The greatest want of the world is the want of men. Men who will not be bought or sold, men who in their inmost souls are true and honest, men who do not fear to call sin by its right name, men whose conscience is as true to duty as the needle to the pole, men who will stand for the right though the heavens fall." Such a character is not the result of accident, is not due to special favors or endowments of Providence. A noble character is the result of self-discipline, of the subjection of the lower to the higher nature, the surrender of self for the service of love to God and man. So I just pray in these last days that God will give us His Spirit so that we will do the right thing. To live in anxiety and fear, to have no hope for the future, it's a miserable life. Yesterday I was listening to a podcast. I think it's Alicia Taylor. She used to be on Patreon, but she was interviewed about how she came out of that. Patreon is similar to OnlyFans, and every time she put images up or did some things that was against her conscience, she had a lot of anxiety. She felt very dark. And after coming to Christ, she had the anxiety go away. And it's that peace that surpasses all understanding that God wants to give us, that we're right with Him, we're right with each other, we've made our wrongs right. And I forgive the social workers, the doctors who have wronged me. But if they don't repent and if they don't stop what they're doing and they keep on harming other children and families, then unfortunately they can't be saved. So, we need to repent. We all need to ask for forgiveness. And, injustices, God will bring an end to this injustice. He has mighty angels up top. There's 2/3 of angels that are unfallen. This is the devil's playground we live in, this earth. And soon probation will close. And I just pray that as we live our lives, we can be a blessing to others. So, just some news. I hope. I got some boogers, but it's pretty cold up here in Salmon Arm. It's early. My mind isn't as clear. I didn't have a good dinner last night. So much pain just walking around. That back is just torturing me, that nerve. I don't know what it is, but anyway, I'll try to go see a massage therapist. And I'm gonna meet with the MLA in the next few days, and I hope things can go forward so Theo can go home. That this kidnapping, Theo won't be kidnapped anymore. He'll return back to his mother and 4 sisters that love him. I have so many pictures and videos of him. I think I want to do a documentary and just put together, the journey my family has been on. Like, even though it's been a bitter cup, it's been a lot of torture, but through it all, our eyes have been opened. Through it all, we've learned so much. The medical system, like who can imagine them puncturing the spine to inject poison or chemotherapy to kill cancer? This is the science that people use. And it's like, you think about what's the hardest part in the body. You think it's the bone, but some doctors said it's actually that barrier between the brain nerve, the cerebral fluid, that lining that's around your spine and your brain. It's actually so hard, so tough to get through that blood-brain barrier. And they puncture it into your spine, and then they inject these things, and all in the name to kill the cancer, so the cancer doesn't spread and overtake you and kill you. Well, you know what? I'm not terrified of cancer. I have a friend, Robert Johnson, that's in Wildwood right now. He got T-cell lymphoma cancer, but he followed all the counsels of health from the pen of Ellen G. White, and he avoids stress, he avoids dairy, meat, processed refined food, and he's cancer-free. He was gonna take radiation therapy to get rid of the cancer cells that were right here, and his cancer was actually caused by his cell phone. And then he introduced us to another lady that he worked with at Wildwood, Alison McLeod. She's in charge of the hydrotherapy department there. She shared her testimony of how she got 4th stage cancer. And the doctor spent almost 8 hours taking off the cancer from stern to stern in her body. And amazingly, she didn't take chemo or radiation, and she's healthier than she's ever been. So, cancer, it can be beaten. There's a doctor that's using ivermectin, fenbendazole, menbendazole, and huge success rates. Wim Hof with cold water therapy, and there's huge success with hydrotherapy. So, you give the body the right conditions, it will heal. We are fearfully and wonderfully made. And I hope there's change. I hope the information, the education, people can debate, people can share their opinion, people have the right to choose. And I just pray that we all can be lights in this world, a blessing to others. We can educate people, because I'm going to be 41 this year, and with my children, this world that they grew up in, that they're growing up in now. I grew up in Wally in Surrey, where there was prostitution, there was drugs, there were I remember in high school I went to one friend's house with a bunch of other guys, and boom, he pops in a VHS and there's a porn video. And I was thinking, why are we watching this? This is not normal. And the sexual perversion that's out there, it's a lot of bad influences in this world, and if we're not careful, it's so easy to become tainted. I just thank God that I have a lovely and faithful wife, and still have my 4 girls, my mom and dad. And the other day, CC called me, which is the mother of Evan, who got murdered by some of the doctors at BC Children's in Canucks Place. And I hope their story will come to light. I hope there will be justice, because all these fraudsters made so much money, and there's so much pain and suffering they've caused. The amount of tears that CC has cried, there needs to be some recompense. So anyway, God is the one that will give vengeance. May the Lord bless us as we try to walk in the light. And it's been a long time since I posted a video. But if you have any questions, I can do another follow-up video to update. And hopefully, God willing, it'll be a good documentary, because, when I think about Take Care of Maya, that was on Netflix, how the mother committed suicide, but then later on, the judge awarded the family, was it $200 million? There's a lot of money in the States. I was like, wow, but unfortunately, a mother had to die for that. That's still not worth it. Or even the story of Lindy Chamberlain, the lady in Australia that was convicted of killing her daughter. There was no witness. There's no confession. She claimed that a dingo killed her baby, but the media, the people thought she was part of a cult. They thought that she killed her daughter, and there's blood on the floor of the car, and the evidence showed that was blood, but it wasn't blood. It was actually some chemicals they used because of the rust in those vehicles. But the forensics lady messed up and said it was blood when it wasn't. And her 4th child was born when she was in prison. She was sentenced to life in prison, and she couldn't spend much time with her baby at all. But after a while, they found some clothing of baby, is it Azaria, the daughter that got taken by a dingo, and she was released, indicted, and I think she was awarded $1.3 million. by the Australian government for all the things that she's gone through. And there's a movie made about it called The Cry in the Dark. Also, a few days ago, my friend called me. She was reading in Epoch Times about a lady that passed away, and she was one of the last of 5 identical twin girls that were born, and they were born somewhere in Canada. But what happened was the government actually took away these 5 identical girls from the parents, and they used these girls as like amusement park show off kids, and you know this they had them in a house, and then they were put on display, and you know there was this whole little town built around these 5 girls, and later on the parents were awarded quite a lot of money because of what the government did to steal away these girls and to make money off of them. So you know, it's stories like this. It just breaks the heart where there's corruption. And I hope that, you know, my son will get the justice he needs, that he can be with the family that loves him. We all miss him dearly. Like, oh, just to think about him walking and playing. And that time in the park with him, March 13th last year, where I could actually take him out into the park to play. What a joy. You know, instead, before that, I was locked in a room for 2 hours. He wanted to go outside the room. Every time he would take my hand and pull me to the door. He wants to open the door, and I can't open the door. We are locked in the room. And you know, after the 2 hours up, oh, there comes his nurse and the other lady, and then they can open the door and they take him out, and he's so happy he can get out. And then one of the ladies says, "Oh, we're gonna go now to see Papa." And I just burned fire in my heart. Like, your Papa? Are you kidding me? I'm his Papa. You guys just stole him away and just committing fraud. So I just pray he can be reunited one day, and hopefully we can put a good documentary together. I'll put together some pictures and videos. And because my wife's phone got damaged, but I was able to recover some of the photos. And now we have a whole bunch of videos and pictures of Theo. And yeah, hopefully these images, you know, it's not just talk, but a lot of doctors and nurses, they know our story. Can you imagine 3 years at BC Children's Hospital, over 2 years at Ronald McDonald House, all because of our dear boy Theo. And but you know, truth, light, it will prevail. Shine the light bright enough, the cockroaches will flee. So may the Lord bless you all. And just thank you for your prayers. And may the Lord help those families who are just taken apart and who are oppressed and being persecuted. I just pray that my voice, I can be an advocate and just help others out who also need a voice. So may the Lord bless you. Have a good day ahead.